If I step away, oh,
There it is, you're live.
Okay. We're live now? Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to the House Rules and Executive Nominations Committee public hearing. The bills and resolutions that we're going to hear are listed in the order that we're going to hear them on the General Assembly website. And we're going to start with Delegate Crosby, if he's here. Delegate Crosby, are you here?
And Madam
Very
Chair,
good.
how are you?
If you could start with House Bill 150, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Brian Crosby here to present House Bill 150 entitled State Government, House of Delegates, Bill Sponsorship Limit. As many of you know, the workload over the last several years has increased dramatically, even though it seems like the number of bills that we pass relatively stays the same. So just some quick stats from 2016 to 2020, the average number of bills proposed in the House of Delegates was 1642. However, in 2019 and then last session, we proposed 2481 and 2745 respectively. And so, yet for all this effort, fewer than 1/3 of the bills introduced pass both chambers and head towards the governor's desk. Many of these bills fail, no doubt, because they overlook some of the policy concerns, errors, or there may be substantial opposition to the suggestion itself. But this could kind of be remedied if we are more focused and attentive and available for even a minor number of bills, let alone major reform efforts, which take hours upon hours. And, one of the big things from my perspective is each bill gets its own fair hearing. Yet, when you have policies like the blueprint, which takes several days and maybe even weeks, and, appropriations could probably attest to the budget. Maybe that's not the best example. Then other bills that get kind of brought up get less time or less focus or their due diligence in committee. Or on the floor for the debate that it probably rightfully should hear. Additionally, the last thing I would just note is that I've talked to several people within DLS, and I think that there is struggle to produce quality fiscal policy analysis. Not that they're not. Nobody's saying that they're not working hard, but I think that we should recognize that they are human. And it becomes significantly harder just based on the number of bills that we propose. Every one of those bills has to get a fiscal and policy analysis, and so the more we do, the less time there is to put forward just natural a good faith effort or dedicate the time needed to make sure that each one of those fiscal policy analysis are done thoroughly. As you'll note, the bill kind of mirrors what has been done for Senator Ferguson's rule over in the Senate. It basically allows for a 12 bill limit, and then if you pre-file 3, you get up to 15. And for those reasons, I asked for a favorable report on House Bill 150.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee members? Raise your hand or do something so I can recognize you. I don't see anyone. I'm seeing no questions. Are there, Delegate Kipke? Did you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, then are there any witnesses? Staff can you let me know if there's any witnesses? Patrick O'Leary, can you tell me, are there any witnesses on this bill? I'm not hearing anything. I think that must.
There are no witnesses.
No witnesses. Thank you very much, Pam Johnson. I appreciate it. There are no witnesses, therefore, and no questions. Therefore, This concludes the hearing on House Bill 150. We'll go on to the next bill, which is House Joint Resolution 4. Delegate Crosby, again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And
Oh, by the way, Delegate Crosby, we're timing, we'll give you 4 minutes, okay?
I should be quicker than that. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair, and distinguished members of the committee. Delegate Brian Crosby for the record, and this is House Joint Resolution 4 entitled Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, Atlantic Menhaden Population Evaluation Prohibition on Commercial Reduction in Fishing. As many of you know, the Chesapeake Bay is one of the most important nurseries for the Atlantic menhaden, and they serve a vital role in our region and ecosystem, and really our economy. Specifically, the menhaden are a major food source for many predator species such as rockfish, as well as osprey and eagles. Since the 90s, the population of menhaden has dropped substantially, and subsequent commercial harvests such as the rockfish, bluefish, or weakfish have dropped 34, 76, and 98% respectively. Over the similar time frame, Maryland has seen a number of our commercial fishermen drop 32%. And a major source of this decline is the localized overharvesting of menhaden by Omega Protein, a Canadian company which uses spotter planes and purse nets for the purpose of reduction of the fishery. It should be noted that Maryland does not permit these practices, so the resolution would not impact our local watermen. Its primary focus is on Omega Protein's Virginia operations in our shared waterways, which harvest 71% of the menhaden allowable catch from the Atlantic coast. In response to the troubling developments, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission first placed limits on menhaden harvest in 2006, and then revised them to a lower number in 2017 to reflect the contemporary data. But the population trends continue to remain worrisome, and the Omega Protein's compliance with these limits is shaky at best. In 2019, they were cited for violation of the limit by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. And as a result, I've introduced this resolution to request that the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission consider a prohibition on the commercial reduction of fishing of Atlantic menhaden until populations reach a sustainable level. And we shouldn't allow really foreign companies to come in here and directly harm Maryland's watermen. And for these reasons, I urge the committee for a favorable report on House Joint Resolution 4, and I'm happy to take any questions. Additionally, Madam Chair, there should be one witness, Phil Zalex, I believe.
Okay, I think we'll see if we have questions for the committee first, for the sponsor. Anyone have any questions? Delegate Barve.
Thank you. So Delegate Crosby, let me see if I understand this correctly. This resolution would apply to overfishing in shared water. What kind of waters are these again?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it would be the shared waterways with Virginia.
And I ought to know the answer to this, but what is is this governed by federal law, or is there a compact between ourselves and Virginia? How is this ordinarily governed?
I believe it's governed by federal law. So this would just be a resolution for us, correct? I mean, you would definitely know that answer better than I would, but I do believe it's federal.
Yeah, I ought to know it better than you would. So have you talked to anybody in Virginia about this? Any legislators in Virginia? What is their reaction to this?
There have been some conversations between Senator Bailey, who is my state senator, and legislators to try to form some sort of compact with Virginia. I can follow up with him and see how that dialogue went.
So do you have any idea at all what the posture of the Virginia legislature might be? I mean, there are many instances, environmental issue instances, where we disagree, for example, with Pennsylvania, but I don't see this as necessarily one where we would disagree with Virginia. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think preliminary conversations were positive. I don't know Virginia's willingness to sign on to this specific resolution.
Well, I was asking if they'd be willing to join with us to regulate this practice if we have shared regulatory authority.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the specific answer, Mr. Chair, and I would definitely have to follow up.
Okay. All right, fine. Well, I'll have my staff look into the legalities of all of this. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Delegate Beitzel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my question related to the same issue with Virginia, and Chairman Barbe, if you follow up on this, maybe you could check this out. I remember a couple of years ago, or more than that, there was a dispute between Maryland and Virginia on commercial harvesting of the Manhattan, because Virginia has a fertilizer factory, and they were harvesting the Manhattan in huge numbers and making fertilizer from it. And there was some kind of discussion pertaining to that to try to get Virginia to agree to reduce the numbers or quit using them to make fertilizer. So my question was, has anything come out of that? So Delegate Crosby, maybe you could check in on that also.
I'm happy to follow up with the Virginia legislators and my senator that he was working with, and I'll get back to both yourself, Delegate Beitzel, as well as Chairman Barbe.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Delegate Kaiser, raise your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question for Delegate Crosby, I just want to make sure I understand. All this resolution is doing is asking this particular commission to look into this Manhattan issue and what they can do about it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee members? Okay, seeing none, we have one witness on this bill, Philip Zalisak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, good morning, committee members. My name is Phil Zalzak. I am the originator of this resolution. The Atlantic Menhaden Management Board of the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission manages the Atlantic menhaden on the Atlantic coast. The board has determined there are insufficient menhaden on the Atlantic coast to support the survivability of commercially important predator fish, such as striped bass. You maybe know these as rockfish, bluefish, and weakfish. Therefore, the board cut the total allowable catch for the entire Atlantic coast by 10% in August, from 216,000 metric tons to a little over 192,000 metric tons, to ensure the survivability of these predator fish. However, the board did not reduce the total amount of Atlantic menhaden, which can be harvested in the Virginia portion of the Chesapeake Bay, by the reduction fishery. This is industrial fishing. This is where you send out boats and they'll take out a whole school of fish. Omega protein is the last remaining reduction fishery on the Atlantic coast. The cap is still 51,000 metric tons, and listen to this, represents 26.5% of the total allowable catch for the entire Atlantic coast. Clearly, overharvesting of Atlantic menhaden is occurring in the Chesapeake Bay. Further, is nothing to preclude Omega protein from harvesting Atlantic migrating into and out of the Chesapeake Bay at the ocean entrance to the bay, which they do throughout the fishing season. Due to commission and Virginia allocations, Omega protein's quota is over 136,000 metric tons, or 71% of the total allowable catch for the entire Atlantic coast. So what's the impact? Who cares, right? Over the last 22 years, there's been a devastating decline in commercial harvests of striped bass, bluefish, and weakfish, with reductions of 34%, 76%, and 98%. Over the last 20 years, there's been a devastating decline in commercial fishermen in Maryland and Virginia, for a total of 668 fishermen, with reductions of 32% and 40% respectively. Over 60% of ocean-going striped bass on the Atlantic coast originate as spawn in the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. GDP associated with the striped bass recreational fishing industry alone on the Atlantic coast amounts to $7.7 billion and over 104,000 jobs, as reported in the 2019 Striped Bass Fishery Management Report. Clearly, this is impacting the business base of other states, not just Maryland and Virginia. In conclusion, I fully support the resolution as written, with one addition to page 2, beginning at line 8.
Okay, can you summarize very quickly, please?
I'm right at we're almost the last sentence, okay? I was told I had 3 minutes, so I'm going to use my full 3.
You had 2 minutes.
Well, I'm going by what I read as the instructions that given to me. Resolve that the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission estimate the ecological and economic benefits of restricting reduction fishing to the Atlantic menhaden outside the 3 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. This would preclude reduction fishing within the bay and the entrance to the bay, and would not take 1 fish from Omega Protein's current allocation. I thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions you may have. In fact, I can answer a number of the questions that the chairman had.
Okay, I'm the chairman and I didn't have any questions. Are there any other questions from any members of the committee?
Well, actually, Madam Chair, I'd be curious to hear what he has to say about the things I said.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Barley. Mr. Zalek, please, would you answer Chairman Barvey's question?
Yeah, he had asked about what the Virginia portion or the Virginia position was. And basically, they did have a meeting of the Virginia Marine Resources Commission before December. And they decided to really do nothing other than just cut everything by 10%, which left the Chesapeake Bay exactly where it is right now. We're taking over 25% of the entire Atlantic coast allocation at the Virginia portion of the Chesapeake Bay. A child could conclude we're overfishing, overharvesting Atlantic menhaden. Now, to add to this, it's not just fishing. There's a professor at William and Mary who's been tracking, he's got like 50 years of research. There are not enough Atlantic menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay to feed osprey in the main stem of the Chesapeake Bay. That's how bad this is.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Madam Chair, I got my hand raised there.
I'm sorry. I thought it was still up from the last time. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Delegate.
I have a question about what is Virginia doing with all the menhaden that they're fishing. I remember there was discussion about this several years ago by either the sports fishery or even the commercial fishery and for rockfish or striped bass in the bay, but that most of it was going to some fertilizer factory in Virginia. Do you know anything about that, or is that true?
Yes, well, mainly you've heard of omega-3, right? You can buy the omega-3 pills, you know? So in theory, this has got some kind of health benefit to it. Of course, there's other sources of omega-3 besides just Atlantic menhaden, but the vast majority of it is like reduced to cat food, food for salmon farms, things like that. So basically, as Delegate Brian Causey has pointed out, we got what I call the Canadian First program, where 71% of the total allowable catch is allocated to a Canadian company, which extracts American resources, turns them into pills, and to feed fishing farms around the world. This is ridiculous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Beitzel. Are there any other questions from any members of the committee?
And Chairman Haley, let me apologize. When I saw Chairman Kumar, the gentleman in the middle of the screen here, I thought he was running the committee. Sorry.
He's got his own committee.
All right.
And I happen to serve on his committee, so it's kind of back and forth.
Yeah, they'll only let you botch up one committee in Annapolis.
All right.
Thank you for your courtesy. Appreciate it. That concludes the hearing on the House Joint Resolution number 4. We'll go to House Joint Resolution 3 if Delegate Bagnall is available.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
We're
good morning.
timing everyone. Sponsors have 4 minutes, witnesses have 2.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. For the record, I'm Delegate Heather Bagnall, District 33 in Anne Arundel County, testifying on HJ3, a joint resolution which calls on the governor and the state of Maryland to create a commission to create a Maryland Women Veterans Memorial. You have my written testimony, so I will try to summarize. There are over 400 monuments to veterans in Maryland. As of now, there is no memorial specifically honoring the Maryland women who have served and continue to serve in all branches of our military. Members of this committee will recall that we established a task force and then subsequent committees to create the memorial in Cecil County at the Maryland House Travel Plaza, which is dedicated to women's roles in all facets of service to the military, but is not specifically for women veterans. From inception to dedication, the Maryland Women in the Military Memorial took 9 years in a serendipitous partnership with the Transportation Authority with the refurbishment of the Travel Plaza, which resulted in a beautiful monument with 0 dedicated state dollars. The National Conference of State Legislators reports that women represent approximately 20% of new recruits, 15% of active duty military members, and 18% of the Guard and Reserve forces. NCLS also reports that as of March 2019, at least 28 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico have enacted legislation to establish a female veteran program, designate a commemorative day or month, or provide for special license plates. According to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, in 2016, women veterans represented approximately 9% of the U.S. veteran population and approximately 13% of Maryland's veteran population. This resolution is supported by the Latino Caucus and Women's Caucuses, and I will be seeking once again the support of the Veterans Caucus, who did support this resolution last year, but we haven't had the opportunity to meet yet. It also has broad bipartisan support, and the cross-file is my Senator, Ed Riley. It is past time that we honor the service, dedication, honor, and sacrifice of these valiant women who have served in our armed forces, which are represented across the entire state of Maryland. I humbly ask for the Rules and Executive Nomination Committee for a favorable report on this joint resolution.
Thank you, Delegate Bagnall. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we have a witness, one witness, Lynn Nash, please.
Thank you
Lynn
very
Nash.
much.
There you are. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
you too. Very
okay,
good.
Great. Thanks so much. Good morning, Madam Chair Healy, Vice Chair Holmes, and members of the Rules and Executive Nominations Committee. And especially thank you very much, Delegate Bagnall, for sponsoring this bill. My name is Lynn Nash, and I'm one of the 17 directors of the Maryland Military Coalition. I'm also a resident of Delegate Barvey's District 17. I'm a retired captain, having served over 30 years in the Army and the United States Public Health Service. And as Delegate Bagnall mentioned, I'm one of 52,000 women veterans living in Maryland, 13% of the total population of veterans. I'm also one of the 176,000 Maryland veterans who was a Gulf War veteran. I spent 7 months in Scud Alley at the 8th Evacuation Hospital as a head nurse of an ICU that was at an air base outside of Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. So not only did we have missiles going over our heads, we were downrange from the oil fires. Our hospital served as the only in-country mass casualty hospital where we treated almost 4,000 US casualties, as well as we were the only hospital that received and treated prisoners of war. That was like a first for US military hospitals. I'm here today to support Joint Bill 3. As you know, Maryland Department of Veterans manages 3 veteran memorials, the World War II in Annapolis, the Vietnam and Korean memorials in Baltimore, and then there's the building in Baltimore, the War Memorial Building. These memorials recognize the contributions of men and women who fought for the principles of freedom, both abroad and at home. They also serve to educate present and future generations about the sacrifices made by the uniformed services of the United States. And so you've heard about this woman's memorial that stands in the rest area at Chesapeake House. It's a standing plaque. So what you didn't see, and I hope you can see, is here's what it looks like. So it was supposed to be this granite monolith that was supposed to have all of these wonderful quotes at the base, and that didn't happen. So
Can you summarize, please?
Yes, I believe that women veterans deserve more. This bill doesn't cost any money. It's simply a request for a commission to study, something that I personally would like to work on. I believe that we deserve better. And as a member of the coalition supporting 150,000 military members and voters in Maryland, we ask you for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Oh, no, I do. I actually, is that Delegate Barbe, is your hand still up from before?
No,
You have a question. Go ahead.
it's not a question. Lynn, I just wanted to thank you for testifying, and it's great to see you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. That concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 3. House Bill 339 and House Bill 410 are both with Delegate Malone, and they have the exact same witnesses. So I would like to take them together and ask you to present both at the same time and have the witnesses testify on both, if that's okay with you, Delegate Malone.
That's fine, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present these two bills.
You have 4 minutes.
These are House Bills 339 and House Bill 410. As many of you know, I've been looking for Maryland to end the gerrymandering that occurs and to have a better redistricting process. I very much support the governor's commission and believe that is the best way to go. But if we cannot go by way of a commission, I suggest modifying our constitution or putting before the voters the chance to modify our constitution so that the requirements are set forth in our constitution, much in the way our state districts already have language regarding the districts having to be drawn compact, continuous, with due regard being given to geographic and political boundaries. Now, House Bill 339 would ask to put before the voters language that parallels the November 7, 2018 decision issued by the United States District Court in the United States Federal Court. This decision was issued by 3 judges, and I wish to note that 2 of the 3 judges were Obama appointees. And the exact language decision said how the district should be drawn. Is it said, the state shall do so applying traditional criteria for redistricting, such as geographic continuity, compactness, regard for natural boundaries and boundaries of political subdivisions, and regard for geographic and other communities of interest, and without considering how citizens are registered to vote or have voted in the past, or to what political party they belong. So House Bill 339 just adds the portion of the opinion that speaks to not taking into account political parties or how people have voted in the past, with the point being that this should be neutral as far as parties, so that the districts are drawn under our current Maryland Constitution, and that the focus is producing, fair and following the First Amendment right for voters to be able to express their opinions. That is what I'm seeking and asking your favorable opinion regarding House Bill 339. With regard to House Bill 410, I'm asking for all of that language to be included, with the first part of the language paralleling our current Maryland Constitution as far as how state legislative districts should be drawn, but also asking for the additional language which should parallel the United States District Court decision requiring that the districts may not account for how individuals are registered to vote, how individuals voted in the past, or the political party to which individuals belong. Now, you know me, and from the past, I've liked to bring in props. So hopefully, if you look here, that is the 3rd congressional district. That's what it looks like. One of these judges, Judge Niemeyer, I believe in the early 2000s, called this a pterodactyl with a broken wing lying prostrate across a billiard table. So 410 would, in my opinion, would be very difficult if the voters supported it for us to continue to have districts like that. And of course, for those who may not live in the 3rd congressional district, here's a picture of all the districts, 3rd and 4th, which show how the 3rd and 4th in particular are some of the most gerrymandered districts are in our entire nation. The case that the federal court dealt with was actually our Western Maryland 6th district. So they also found that the 6th district violated individuals' constitutional rights. And one last prop, it's gotten so bad that they're even making
Can you
games.
summarize now, please?
Please give a favorable opinion so that games such as Map Maker aren't putting discussions in about how badly our districts are drawn. And please give a favorable to House Bill 339 and 410. Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the sponsor from anyone on the committee? Seeing none, if you do have a question, you can please speak. Oh, Delegate McComas. Okay, I did see you wave your hand. You need to unmute yourself. You're muted, Delegate McComas. Delegate McComas.
Okay.
There you go.
They had the live streaming in front of me, so I couldn't get to the unmute. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Malone, let me ask you this. What, as a practical purpose, what does this do to a representative when you have the broken wing pterodactyl with communities that maybe don't have any interest in what the total one community is opposite of the other community? How does that work or not work?
Well, I'll speak on the state level first. I know within District 33, there are literally communities. My community, the Courts of Four Seasons, one side of the street is in one district and the other side of the street is in another district. The same is also true in Severna Park. There's a place where a community where a road that goes through the community, right through the middle of the community, one side of the community is in one district and the other side of the community is in another district. Now, and I mentioned this, map maker game, which if any of you like Catan, I encourage you to buy it for your families. It's a fun game. And what that's called is called cracking. And basically you're cracking the districts so that a representative, if you go door knocking, you got to make sure you really got your map right there, and you better have the exact street addresses, because you just can't go to, the Eden Woods community and assume that that whole community is in a district. That's what happens certainly just on a state district level. The same also happens on a congressional level, and what's particularly frustrating on a congressional level is, and on a state district level, is there's folks who just don't vote. They basically feel my vote doesn't count. This is a gerrymandered district. It's not going to matter. My vote won't count, so they don't vote. And to me, it's an extreme tragedy. And then I further to often talk about the fact we see the ugliness in Washington, and in particular with the congressional districts. We have districts that are drawn that the only way you're going to win the district is if you run very far left or very far right, or happens to be a particular good year for a particular party. It causes very polarized politics. And a lot of times the best answers are somewhat in the middle. Unfortunately, that becomes very difficult. I think we've all experienced it, to sometimes be as strong an advocate for that middle position, which is really the best policy, because unfortunately, because of the politics, that if a candidate or an elected official votes too often in that middle position, you get called as a Republican, you get called a rhino, and then you may lose in a primary. And as a Democrat, you get called as not being, liberal enough. And that's not good policy. This is extremely destructive to our society within Maryland and within our nation. And this legislation, was well thought out. The Attorney General office that represented the state of Maryland in the court case, and Michael Kimberling both put forth strong arguments. Michael Kimberling, who was the attorney representing those challenging the districts, the judges issued some sound, logic as far as how to handle this situation. And once again, of the three judges, two of them were Obama appointees, and one was a Reagan appointee. So the ruling came from a bipartisan appointed panel of judges.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to the witnesses. Jacqueline Coolidge. Please speak on both bills at the same time, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Jacqueline Coolidge, speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Maryland, on behalf of both HB 339 and HB 410. The League of Women Voters supports a state redistricting process and standards that promote fair and effective representation of the entire population of Maryland in the General Assembly and in Congress. Partisan influence in the redistricting process has created unfairness, reducing the measure of accountability elected officials have to their full electorate. This bill seeks to prevent this by removing partisan influence from the redistricting process. Election maps are adjusted every 10 years to account for population shifts. However, US politicians on both sides of the aisle have also used the redistricting process to provide their party with an advantage in elections. Using current technology, politicians today can achieve this with unprecedented precision. These bills would attempt to remove that temptation by removing consideration of political affiliation of voters in the process. After the 2010 census, 7 states adopted new commissions to draw these districts to reduce partisan influence for a total of 18 states. Although these bills don't call for a commission, Maryland should at least join them in strengthening our democracy by limiting partisanship. We're all aware of the growing apathy, or more lately, civil unrest of voters who believe that the system is rigged and that their vote doesn't matter. We think that ignoring partisanship in the redistricting process would help to restore the faith of voters in their elected officials. We urge a favorable report on both bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul Sundell, please.
It is a pleasure to be in front of this committee. I strongly endorse both bills. I'm a retired macro economist and a registered Democrat, and this goes across party lines. Maryland was determined by a Xavier, a Philadelphia cartography firm, to be the worst gerrymandered congressional districts in the country. That's not an award you want to win. At least I would hope not. And just as everyone else that has testified, it does great harm. It's the worst form of voter suppression around, because you're not only raising the cost of voting, but you, through packing and cracking, you are causing some votes to be worth more and some to be worth less. And it would be great if we could get reform on the national level. It's not likely, because in the past, as in my notes, both parties have failed when they've had the opportunity, and partisanship unfortunately likely will win out here again. But we've seen other states go and do it. We've seen Ohio in 2017. We've seen.
Can you please summarize?
Yes. It's been done in other states, and it's been done recently. And I live in Anne Arundel County, 4th most populous county in the state. No congressman lives in Anne Arundel County because they know through the gerrymandering, he has no chance. And when you look at the legislative districts, it's obvious that District 21 is packed to the nth degree. There is no way that a 10-5 majority among Anne Arundel delegates does reflect the will of the Anne Arundel County voter. Anne Arundel, it leans Republican, but thanks to gerrymandering and Prince George's County having
Okay.
20% of Anne Arundel County's delegates, that as well as unusual line drawing in Anne Arundel County itself, that's how you get a very poor outcome that doesn't reflect the voter at all.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee members? I see none. Going once. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming today. That concludes the public hearing on these two bills. Next, we'll go to House Joint Resolution 1. And Delegate Stein is ill today and he cannot be here. So his legislative aide is going to present his bill. And Margie Brazil, I think you say your name. How do you say your name? I'm sorry.
It's Brazel.
Okay, try.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. For the record, I'm Margie Brazel and I'm representing Delegate Dana Stein today. Madam Chair Healy, Vice Chair Holmes, and members of the committee. Blue catfish are Maryland's new snakehead, a fast-growing invasive threat to the Chesapeake Bay's ecology. Blue catfish rival the threat of snakeheads in that they are predators of several of the bay's important species, including blue crabs and oysters. These fish are ubiquitous in the bay and thrive in every one of the bay's tributaries. However, they do have one vulnerability. They are very tasty. Prior to congressional intervention, the process of blue catfish had been regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, using the same processing regime as all other seafood. DNR, which recognized the looming threat of blue catfish, was very successful in building the blue catfish commercial market. But then in 2017, due to international trade pressure, catfish farmers in southern states pushed Congress to mandate that all catfish be processed under the U.S. Department of Agriculture's stricter regulations, making them the only fish to be so regulated. This stricter USDA regulation has throttled the blue catfish market, reducing the removal of the fish from the bay. Our congressional delegation has its hands full in Washington, D.C., trying to provide regulatory relief for this invasive fish. But this joint resolution will make a difference in their advocacy. It urges that federal oversight responsibilities for the processing and inspection of wild invasive catfish caught in the bay be returned to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Delegate Stein asks for a favorable vote on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the witness? All right, thank you very much. We're going to go to other witnesses now. Robin Clark.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Robin Jessica Clark with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Margie Brazel laid out the resolution very clearly, so I don't think I need to add very much. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation strongly supports this resolution as a nudge to the federal government. As I understand, this transfer of oversight has been for over 10 years now. So we're really just trying to inspire some action and light a fire under our federal partners. It would be really great to be able to get a catfish fishery in Maryland that would help us harvest down the rates, because it's the most cost-effective way to reduce that threat to our other seafood industries like the rockfish and the crabbing, if we can get a sort of market-based solution. So with that, we urge your favorable action on this resolution, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next witness. When we get through the witnesses, I'll take questions if there are any. David Sikorsky, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is David Sikorsky. I'm the Executive Director of Coastal Conservation Association, Maryland. We're a recreational fishing group in the state of Maryland, and we're proud to support this resolution. I will say me too to the previous comments. I'm here to answer questions from a recreational fishing perspective, and I recommend everybody go out to your local store and try and find some blue catfish so you understand what a great meal they provide. I know it's $8.99 a pound right across the street at the Whole Foods near my house, so please check that out, and I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. James McKittrick, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members. For the record, James McKittrick with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. For those of you who are lucky enough to serve on the House Environment and Transportation Committee, you will recall last year, before the world ended, that you were treated to a nice, tasty blue catfish taco bar. Unfortunately, we're still building that market, and as many of the witnesses have already said, one of the key hurdles to that is the USDA regulation. DNR has been working very hard with our federal delegation as well as the USDA to try to ease that, as I'm sure you've heard us mention before, but also through the COVID-19 pandemic, we've also been trying to work with the USDA under the auspices of food security. And despite our firmest arguments, there just seems to not be any action. Now, I do want to recognize that the committee members, you've all heard a lot of compelling joint resolutions this morning. But it's my firm belief that with the passage of this joint resolution this year, we can make a difference. We're not shouting into the void. We are providing ammunition to our federal delegation to approach the USDA under the new Biden administration to make these common sense solutions. Since last year when we did this, I've been folks from across the country have made contact with me. We've been sharing stories. So this does make a difference, and I would urge a favorable committee report, and I would urge the committee to please act on this year. And thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Delegate McComas has a question. Delegate McComas, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for the individuals that have been doing some fishing. In 2017, we went down to Charles County, and I thought that the catfish were going to get into the boat. And and this was an area where they had bass fishing tournaments. And and of course we were there just before the tournament, but this has been a problem for a long time. And I'd just like to know if we could, how soon do you anticipate you can kind of get things kind of corrected? What's your timeline?
I guess I'm probably best suited to answer that question. It's very hard to tell, right? So, we have a general estimate of the biomass. However, what we don't have is a good estimate of what a normal market looks like of catch. So it's really hard to say. I mean, we can tell you that the biomass is especially in the Potomac, as you note. I'm assuming Charles County, you were on the Potomac or tributary of the Potomac. But yeah, you know, we won't really know until we can get our market up and running, and we can't get our market up and running without the passage of this joint resolution.
Well, and I suppose COVID is causing a lot of the problems too, because anecdotally, we had heard that some of the restaurants, if you could catch the catfish, they were taking they'd pay $30 for a fish, and there's not a lot of meat, you know, when you scale it down and everything on the fish. There's a lot, you know, the head and the bones and everything. So that's in other words, it would be a wonderful market for fishermen, I would think.
Yeah, and that's why the USDA regulations. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if we can have our processors not have the burden to entry, not have the burden of cutting, and to treat this like any other fish that's currently going to market, yeah, you're absolutely on the nose. It's a no-brainer. It's tasty. It doesn't taste like normal catfish, and it's awesome on tacos.
Very good.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? I'm sorry.
No, but
Were you finished, Delegate?
I just wanted to point out that they do make great fish tacos.
They do. I agree. Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on House Joint Resolution 1. We'll now go to House Joint Resolution 2, which is the last piece of legislation we have to consider today in our hearing. Delegate Cox.
Good morning, Madam Chair Healy, Vice Chair Holmes, House GOP and Democratic Party leadership, and honorable members of the committee and chairs of the committee of this honorable House of Delegates. It is a privilege to speak to you today on behalf of millions of Marylanders. For the record, I'm Delegate Cox, urging passage of House Joint Resolution 2, resolution to end the state of emergency. Today, according to the Restaurant Association of Maryland, 17% of restaurants across America have lost their businesses, and up to 40%, even in Maryland, are likely to fail without immediate changes in government policy. And this is only one industry. Suicide and overdoses are rising. Children, singles, struggling families, houses of worship, small businesses, and our very health are all at stake because of one thing, a perpetual state of emergency. You are the leadership of the representatives of the people of our great state in any emergency, because it is the General Assembly that holds both constitutional and final statutory power to check and balance the executive. I respectfully come before you today asking you to do that. Our executive branch has mistakenly pursued a continued course of unitary military power, even though the President of the United States has separately declared a national state of emergency under the Stafford Act. Under the Stafford Act, money including CARES Act and FEMA grants may be received by the state of Maryland without continued declarations of states of emergency, with orders taking control of our personal health care decisions and our daily freedom. We remember that this included the military surrounding this very State House in March 2020, while we were doing the people's business with armored vehicles and armed soldiers. In fact, on March 24th, 2020, Governor Hogan applied for and received 2 days later a major disaster relief from the federal authority. And he stated in writing that he intended to continue the hazard mitigation emergency powers at least through August 25th, 2021. That's 6 months from now. Why were we told, and why were the people of Maryland told 14 days to bend the curve, which is now within days of a year later? As we know, this has resulted in disastrous ruin. The emergency assistance was not the actual application. Instead, it was a major disaster relief application, which actually provides Maryland with more money. Under U.S. Code 42, Section 5170, all that merely requires is for the governor to apply for the assistance on the FEMA application or the other federal agencies' applications, including a cover letter, detailing the reasons for the major disaster needs and indicating a plan to use those funds to recover from the disaster. There's no mandate under either federal law or the Public Safety Article 14106 that the governor take charge of our businesses, that he shut down churches and concerts, that he order people to remain in their homes, or that he take any other extreme actions in Maryland. The exercise of the Maryland Emergency Management Agency power available to the governor is there, and an opportunity exists to use those funds to help the state of Maryland recover short of the disastrous perpetual emergency powers. So I'm asking today, under the emergency powers of the governor and under the Stafford Act, that the governor be limited in his scope and power to his executive orders and proclamations to direct his Maryland Emergency Management Authority, not the entire society, and seizure of all of our liberties. Such a constitutionally limited power is available under the statute and should never outweigh the Constitution, which is the highest law of the land under Article 44 of the Declaration of Rights. We must remain a republic, and that really is what is at stake today and why I'm before you. Because the checks and balances of this body and of this committee are essential for the full General Assembly to be able to provide a check on the executive authority. Regardless of the decision-making, we have a role, and that role should be taken. The Maryland General Assembly can right now terminate the state of emergency, and the governor is not therefore limited from continuing a more limited state of emergency to receive funds and to allow the distribution of vaccines and to allow the recovery that we know is going to take years for Maryland to recover from. You are the representative voice of the people. No one else has more immediate power under the Constitution and the laws than you. And so I'm asking on behalf of the people of Maryland under Article 14107A4I that you exercise that authority with your immediate approval of House Joint Resolution 2. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, I'll go to the witness list. Hold on. Vince McAvoy, please. Mr. McAvoy in the house here? Hello? Mr. McAvoy? I see you, but, well, I see his name, but I don't, and I see his, but you're muted, Mr.
Can you
Mac.
hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Thank you. I'm having
Can you
problems.
put your,
Thank you.
excuse
I'm
me,
having
before
problems
you,
with the phone.
excuse me, Mr. McAvoy, before you start, can you rename yourself and put your full name on the screen for us?
I apologize. I don't know how to do that. It's oral though.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then just go ahead. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
I appreciate it. I appreciate Delegate Cox bringing this bill, and thank you very much, committee. I apologize.
Oh, we've lost you. We've lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Start over.
Okay. I'm sorry, the phone line keeps dropping me. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I probably would do better sending in some written. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I just want to say that we've had a complete attack on each of the 5 tenets of the First Amendment. Plainly expected, and it's the check and bounce to the balance.
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Vince. I'm just really sorry that we can't hear you. I'd appreciate it if you would send in some written testimony. You can send it by email and we'll make it part of the record. We'll move on to the next witness, and at the end of it, we'll give another chance, okay? Katya Harper, please. Katya Harper? Ms. Harper here? All right, we'll try Tim Walters.
Morning, delegates. How's everyone today? It's snowing up North Anne Arundel County, so you guys are hopefully bundled up. I appreciate your time this morning. I'm the co-founder and chairman of Reopen Maryland, and we're asking you to support this resolution. Reopen Maryland operates as a 501c4 and advocates for the responsible opening of religious, commercial, educational, and social life of all Marylanders. We currently have 26,000 active members. Let me say that we unequivocally acknowledge the virus is real and has from the very beginning. However, Governor Hogan's first emergency order, one of 12 over the past year, was promulgated in order to flatten the curve. This was accomplished well over half a year ago. Since then, the justification and metrics to end the emergency order have continued to change, and without any scientific basis behind them. Just this weekend, Johns Hopkins reported that herd immunity will be met in mid-April of this year. Governor Hogan himself is now screaming to open the schools that he himself closed. And his rationale currently is that the science no longer supports keeping the schools closed. Hasn't since almost the beginning. We've seen this proven by the private schools who've been open since August of last year, as well as daycare centers, which have been open much longer. No super spreader events have occurred from them. The Maryland COVID dashboard itself supports this. But I'd like to take a moment to just point out Florida. I think we need to contrast Florida's, the way they've handled this as well as ours. Florida has over 25 million people and 25% of them are in the age category of 65 or over. Maryland, on the contrast, has 6 million with just over 15% 65 or older. And yet when we look at from the CDC's dashboard of deaths per 100,000, Florida is at 138. Maryland is at 127. Let that sink in. With all of the difference in the events that Governor Hogan's tyranny has caused, it has had minimal impact on the deaths.
Okay.
So we're asking you to support this resolution.
Can you stop and
Sure.
summarize right now? Just summarize your last sentence, one thought.
Sure. So we have states that are open and states that aren't closed. This virus has not been impacted by any of the overreaches that have occurred. It just hasn't. It's a virus. We'd have to lock everything down in order for 2 weeks and everybody stay home. No EMS, no hospitals, no nothing.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Very good. We'll go back to Katja Harper. I see her name on the screen here. Ms. Harper? Hello? Can you unmute yourself? Katja Harper. All right. Well, we'll ask you to send written testimony too, if you can. Is Kathy Allison on the call? Don't see her. And is Vince McAvoy still here? If you want to give it another shot. Okay. Delegate McComas has a question for, who do you want to speak your question to?
I want to speak to Mr. Walters, Tim Walters.
Okay, go for it.
Mr. Walters, I'd like to know, okay, let's say we pass this. What would you say what effects do you want to see if we pass this resolution?
Delegate, it's really a great question. I stand with Delegate Cox on the fact that first and foremost, there's a constitutionality here that has to come into effect to ensure that the republic stays whole and healthy. Secondly, we have an incredibly educated state here. Give us the data and allow us the individual responsibility of taking care of our own lives versus directing things. The tyranny and then the lack of faith in the people are just, they're two things that have come together in a perfect storm. So what we're asking the government to do is to simply provide the data and allow us to make the decisions.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody on the committee? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 2. At this time, Delegate Holmes has a motion to make on some of the late file bills that have been requested by some of the chairmen. Delegate Holmes, your motion, please. Delegate Holmes. Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to move bills as follows. HB 1336, HB 1337, HB 1338, HB 1339, HB 1341, HB 1342, HB 1343, HB 1344, HB 1345, HB 1346, HB 1347, HB 1349, HB 1350, and HB 1351, and HB 1352.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor of re-referring the bills as listed? Is there discussion? All right. All those in favor of re-referring the bills as listed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. The ayes have it. The bills will be re-referred to the appropriate committees. Are there any other business to come before the Rules Committee today? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very